Story 1. I hate that something so ugly came out of me. For context, my mom is Korean, slim, and petite. She had two daughters with a black American, and we were never skinny, pretty, or smart enough for her. And she told us all the time. Story 2. My dad told me and my brother when we were young, "You have already seen me be abusive, so there is no point in trying to be nice to you guys anymore. But your little sister still thinks I am a good dad, so do not you dare ruin that for me. I have never forgotten that." Story 3. I watched the whole time, and you're a liar. That man didn't assault you. You're just a prostitute. My mother, when I was 14 and had been abused by a family friend for a year, she walked in on one of those attacks. I looked up but was too dissociated by pain and was told not to speak or I'd be killed. So I said nothing. That woman looked me in the eye, watched as I was violated, and then walked out. My father was an attorney. He didn't want people to know because he was in the running to be the judge for our county. So he and my mom sat down to convince me that a year of being assaulted didn't happen. Yeah, it most certainly did. When I left the house at 17 and reported the assault, my parents were sent to mandatory counseling, and my abuser went to jail. Sadly, he didn't stay long, but it helped a little. Obviously, I do not speak to my parents. No parent watches their child, as that child is viciously attacked, then walks out of the room to prepare to tell them that they're a liar and a prostitute. I've moved on, but I will not forgive certain things, and that is one of them. Story 4. You're so disrespectful. You are such a disappointment. What have you accomplished in your life besides perfecting how to play the victim? He was mad I didn't worship him on Veterans Day. He told me how disrespectful it was not to acknowledge this day for him. He was dishonorably discharged 20 years ago, completely ruined our entire family over it, and went to jail. No, I don't thank him for his service that he destroyed with his selfishness. But I didn't even say all that. I just said nothing, and he absolutely lost it on me. They really hate being ignored. Also, this was like 2 weeks ago. He says and does stuff like this all throughout my life. Story 5. If I have to choose, I will take my boyfriend way before you, my son. And later on, she is asking herself why I stopped talking to her 10 years ago. There is way more to the story, but it is part of my decision. Story 6. You're just like your father. Gee, thanks for comparing me to the abusive man who abandoned us before I was born, whom I have never met, and have absolutely no frame of reference for whatsoever as to what he was like. I just stay quiet at family dinners now. I love my family but kind of hate spending time with them all because of this. Story 7. Everyone is invited. In regards to family holidays, I refuse to go if the pedophile youth pastor who molested and raped my friends would be there, as he is in a long-term relationship with my cousin, who was also one of his victims at around 15. But I'm the closed-minded one. Story 8. When they took my younger half-sister to a theme park and didn't let me go too. Their reason: Mom and stepdad. We wanted to just be our family. Gee, thanks for letting my teenage self know I'm not part of your family. Story 9. I can't believe you expect so much from us just because you got diagnosed with cancer. My mother, while kicking me out of her house in the middle of chemotherapy at 25 years of age, when I couldn't afford to pay rent on unemployment. Story 10. You weren't supposed to be born. My parents had a son and a daughter before me. They thought they had the perfect family. Then my mother got pregnant with me. All my life, I was told I was a mistake. I was kicked out of the house at 17, while my brother had all his college and living expenses paid for, and my sister lived with my parents. At my mother's funeral, I went up to my father and brother, whom I hadn't seen in a few years, and attempted a bit of reconciliation. My father told me he did not want me in his life, and my brother told me I was a mistake and my two kids were a mistake, and he didn't want anything to do with me. They are dead now, cancer and alcohol poisoning. I have a great life, and my sister and I are close now. But I never felt as if I belonged, and for many, many years I hated myself. Story 11. I can't wait for you to get better, so you can start cooking decent meals again. My husband, when I was recovering from battling non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Update. I'm 15 years cancer-free and happily divorced. Story 12. My mother would call me lazy all the time. I really was not lazy. I did whatever chores she told me to do. Then I would go to my room, close my door, and begin to read whatever books I had taken from the public library the previous Saturday. I got the reputation of being odd along with being lazy. Story 13. You made up these allegations about rape and abuse because he would not take you back after you broke up and you were just angry he is in your brother's life. My mother wrote that in a letter. I still have said letter to remind me my family took the side of my abuser and they are awful people for doing this. Story 14. My mother lost a child to leukemia, then lost everything else while fleeing war. Her home, her possessions, her future, and even more family members. Yet she said to me years after that I was God's greatest punishment to her when I came out as gay. Story 15. Sometimes it's not even direct, and it's something like, you will never understand this because you do not have what it takes, which can cut deep because it dismisses your effort and potential outright. Story 16. You need to marry rich before your looks fade because no man will marry you for you. Positive retroactive edit. I did not marry rich. My incredible, genius husband and I both went to graduate school, but we met when I was in the service industry, and we are super happy. Ironically, we are better off financially than my mother, who told me this. Also, I am 35 and still hot, so you were wrong on both accounts, Mom. Story 17. I've been on meth for the past 20 years and no one will believe you. My aunt said to me when I was 10 because I was worried about the guys sleeping on her couch because of my little cousins. She said this to try and manipulate me into not telling anyone. It worked for a year and guess what? She was right until she got clean this year and told everyone the truth, and no one has brought it up to me because they shunned me for it as a kid. Story 18. When I was 6 or something, my father told me, if you don't behave yourself, I'll beat you so bad that I'll stop only if the police come. Well, I behaved myself pretty well, but 20 years later I can't forget this, and my relationship with my father is quite bad. Story 19. I was 3 years old. My mom had been yelling at me about something, not uncommon, and had thrown a hot cup of coffee in my face. I had been crying and was in the gasping for breath, almost a hiccup stage that I had no control over. She told me several times to stop it and then said, just bring me the biggest knife from the kitchen. I'm going to cut my wrists. I can't deal with you anymore and I'd rather kill myself. Story 20. One simple word actually. Liar. I was 7 and telling her about the sexual assault I experienced from my stepbrother. She then slapped me across the face. She is now sorry and she asked if I was truthful, and now she knows I was being truthful. Story 21. She's the difficult one. My mom said to a complete stranger as she was trying to explain all of her children. The athlete, he is very intelligent, she loves books, she's really good at soccer, and she is the difficult one. I will never forget the look of sadness that overcame that stranger's face as she saw me listen to my mom say that in front of me. Story 22. I was super young at the time, around 7 or 8, and my great-grandmother was on her way out. For context, I'm the only fair-skinned person in my family. They're all Hispanic and much darker than me. Every time we would go to her house, she would ask me where my real family was and that it couldn't be them because I was white. It doesn't hurt now, knowing she wasn't there 100%, but as a child who already felt like an anomaly among my family, those words made me feel as if I'd never belong in my family. Story 23. Someone in my family told me I didn't deserve to have any more kids, and they were going to pray that I never had any more kids. They added every curse word there was. My late mom said nothing and didn't do anything to stop it. I lost the baby 2 weeks later, and my family all said, so, she had no business getting pregnant anyway. No lie, this is the truth. Story 24. From mom about new husband. We love each other more than we love you. I was 16. Another runner-up. I had big feet at a young age. At the time, regular stores didn't carry size 13, so I had to go to big and tall stores. You have big feet because you're fat. I wasn't then, kind of am now. Story 25. I was doing family therapy with my abusive sister, just so I could say I tried everything before I left. She berated and insulted me until I was crying. I couldn't defend myself because I love her and don't want to be mean even if she's being mean to me. Finally, I couldn't take it and tearfully whispered, "Mom," just wanting my mom to say something, to help me, to stop the person she was watching hurt me. She looked right at me and said nothing. Now she's confused why I'm considering going very low contact. She couldn't have been more on the nose. She literally told me I have no mother. I called for my mom, and no one answered. Story 26. Can you babysit for me to go on a second honeymoon? I had already forced myself to watch him for a week for the first honeymoon. I was in the middle of chemotherapy. I could barely get out of bed to take care of my then 2-year-old. I didn't want pity, just don't add more when I'm already struggling so badly. My mother said regarding the grandchild she took custody of for one of the favorite siblings. Even though I treat all my kids the same, like if someone had offered to change one diaper or make one meal, I would have been thrilled. Instead, I needed to do stuff for them. Then when I asked her why she treated me so differently, well, because you can handle it, the other kids need you to take care of them. I was the third youngest, so I was taking care of a kid years older than me. Now half of my siblings call me to fix their lives. But if I need anything, only 1 out of 7 has my back. Sorry for the rant, but there are so many things. That's just one of the most recent. Story 27. I was asking my aunt, who is a doctor, about a treatment I thought was my last option for help, because it was other than just continuing to try medications that were not working. I wanted to have as many doctors' opinions as I possibly could. And she looked at me and laughed and went, "Oh, that's for the real bad cases. I had almost died 6 months before." So, anyways, I didn't listen to her. I listened to my doctor's advice of, if you believe trying this treatment is right for you, then you should do it, and we'll get you started in the hospital. She was both my private doctor and worked at the hospital that did the treatment on Monday. I have not spoken to that family since I started the treatment. It was that interaction that proved to me that there was nothing I could do for them to ever take me seriously, that they would literally watch me die and not offer any help. I got the treatment I needed, and I am alive and happy, and it is their loss entirely. They'd probably just insult me somehow anyways. Story 28. Being told she was on birth control when she got pregnant. She was forced to keep me by my dad's family, even though she was apparently pregnant at her wedding to my dad. At the end of the wedding, my dad ran off with another woman. So pretty much I wasn't wanted. Story 29. I told my dad that he was the reason I wanted to kill myself sometimes, and he responded with, "If you're going to do it in the woods outside and don't get your blood on my floor." It has been 4 years, and I still remember that whole conversation. Story 30. Broke my arm on a school ski trip, causing the whole trip to come back late. Dad picked me up at school and told me he wasn't taking me to the hospital. Maybe mom will take me tomorrow. Got home. Both parents refused to take me as they needed their sleep. They put sleep ahead of me. The look the orthopedic doctor gave my mother the next afternoon upon hearing this confirmed it was as messed up as I thought. This was the 1980s, so child services weren't involved. I'm both saddened and strengthened by the similar responses. If you haven't, please consider therapy. I was in my mid-40s until I did. Can really help. It isn't too late to start. Story 31. At the wake for my 1-year-old son, my mother told me, "Try not to be so sad. Think of all the free time you'll have now. I have other children, so I don't really have more free time." But I also knew she was just trying to find a way to relate to me, so I don't hold it against her, or anyone else who said something horrible during that time. My mother-in-law also told me, if you could just stop talking about him, maybe you wouldn't miss him so much and we could move on. Again, I know full well that they were just trying to relate to me and they were also grieving. This sounds really horrible, but I know both love me very much and don't mean it the way it sounded. I also know they were both devastated when we lost our son. Edit to add, tomorrow will be 17 years since he passed. I still miss him and I still talk about him. Story 32. When explaining to my mom why I didn't want to visit my dad in the hospital, I finally told her that when I was 9 years old, I didn't break my arm falling off my bike. My dad purposefully broke it, and she said, "You need to be the bigger person. He probably doesn't even remember." Story 33. My mother told me on separate occasions that I wasn't likable or lovable, that I wouldn't be a good mother, that I lack sweetness and that's why people like her better than me, that she never really wanted to be a mother, and that she hated when I hugged her. My mother would badmouth me and gossip about me to people when I was in the room, so I had to witness it, and she would get a huge smile while trying to get them to agree with her to let me know everyone was against me. She told me I was disgusting for having a period. She told me all of my failures belonged to me and any success I had was because of her. My dad would back up a lot of these statements, and it's hard to pick which was most hurtful. Story 34. I was at a nice restaurant for my brother's birthday dinner. I ordered a non-alcoholic cocktail. I am a recovering alcoholic and was fairly early in my sobriety at this point. I was also on a major weight loss journey and was on a pretty restricted diet. When I ordered the non-alcoholic cocktail, my dad said, "Did you just order an alcoholic beverage?" To which I plainly responded, "No, it's a non-alcoholic cocktail, not a cocktail." My brother, who at that point wasn't completely aware of my situation, we lived in different cities and have never been incredibly close, said, "What? Can he not have alcohol because of his diet?" To which my dad firmly responded, "No, he can't have alcohol because he's an alcoholic." This was devastating to me. It wasn't even the words themselves. He wasn't wrong. I can't have alcohol because I'm an alcoholic, and that's the fact of the matter. What burned so deeply was the judgment and condescension in his voice when he said it, as if he were ashamed to have an alcoholic son. The glare that he gave me, which let me know that he didn't entirely believe that the drink I ordered was non-alcoholic. The implied warning that I was already the family problem, and he didn't need me making it worse for everyone. All of that, coupled with the fact that at least 1/3 of the people at the table were not fully aware of what I was going through at that point, and my dad let the secret out in front of all of them. And he knew what he was doing. He knew that I was dealing with immense shame at that point and that it was incredibly difficult for me to face the world. And he still chose those words, and he still chose the way in which he said them. I'll never forget that.